The left has destroyed good faith. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I was recently watching a video by a friend of mine who is a new YouTuber by the name of Spacepan that you should check out. Link in the description. He's a very funny and informative gay guy who you'll probably like if you like my channel. In his video, he mentioned a great term which I am wanting to try to train myself to use more, which is compassion fatigue, which he used to describe the feeling of no longer believing feminists when they claimed that female city council members in Seattle supposedly got a bunch of sexist hate mail for turning down a proposal to build a new sports arena. Truthfully, I kind of have to agree about that instance, in the way that I just can't believe that there was endless legitimately sexist hate mail sent, because I've seen far too many feminists freak out over being called sweetie or darling, as if that is synonymous with being sent messages composed of words cut from magazines saying that they are all cunts that should be raped to death. Regardless, this feeling of compassion fatigue is extremely common, and I run into it all the time. It seems like every few days I come across some fourth wave intersectional feminist on the internet who is complaining about her school, a social setting, or former working environment as being quote unquote unsafe, and she's talking about trigger warnings and microaggressions. When I mention the common countering arguments against trigger warnings, like that it's kind of unreasonable for a small segment of the most easily offended population to demand control over people's speaking patterns, half of the time, the feminists will actually try to argue with me about the population size, saying something like, "Small population? Over half of the women in our nation have been raped, so I don't think that is a particularly small population." At which point, I usually say something snarky about FBI reports being more valid sources of data than the blog Everyday Feminism, which inspires the microaggressed to block me, and very often triggers the mutual friend whose Facebook timeline we were communicating on to reprimand me as some sort of callous jerk that should be more sensitive to the poor fragile women's. But sorry, I just can't do it anymore. Obviously, I still have compassion for legitimate victims of rape, but we don't live in an age of a massive rape statistical epidemic, at least in the United States, which is being ignored by the media and culture at large, where women are being systematically denied a voice for some strange political motive. No, it is quite literally the opposite. 1 in 5 women on college campuses were supposedly being raped, according to data used basically everywhere in media, including on Hillary Clinton's motherfucking campaign homepage. Despite the fact that the statistic was debunked by the statisticians who gathered the data themselves in Time magazine. And considering how much we heard about stories like that Brock guy from Stanford, Duke Lacrosse, Mattress Girl, and Bill Cosby, we can safely say that rape has been pushed at the forefront of sociopolitical conversation very deliberately, and that any woman who goes along with that narrative about rape culture and work being unsafe because of trigger warnings or lack of trigger warnings or fucking whatever, any woman who talks about that stuff is just a particularly whiny embodiment of the mainstream status quo. But of course, it's not only the upper middle class white women who can't help but bring up rape 6 times a day on social media that have made me completely and utterly exhausted when it comes to having compassion for individuals that I do not share the same demographic experiences with. No, in basically every category of competition in the oppression Olympics, the athletic spectacles have worn me into the ground when it comes to their hyperbolic exaggerations of how hard they supposedly have it. Tall tales about supposed oppression have grown very steadily since 2012, when for the prior 4 years people didn't talk much about it at all, as if now we are supposed to believe that the social fabric in our nation is the worst it's ever been, despite the fact that nobody sees it besides political opportunists and people whose entire lives revolve around activism. And don't think that there isn't an obvious motive behind all of it. Aside from Hillary Clinton's campaign being run strictly on social grievance mongering, people like Naima Lowe, the mad queen of Evergreen College, all have at least a specific personal motive to amplify the stories of their dissatisfactions in life in order to gain social influence, power, and money. You don't have to believe me, but I know from extensive personal experience that even the most pathetically tragic homeless transgender person of color only seems weak and defenseless long enough to secure a crash pad at your house, at which point you won't be able to get rid of them as they end up screaming at you about how hard their life is and how you're just a privileged, racist piece of shit for demanding that they go after a few days. Of all my numerous shortcomings, which I can list for you in excess some other time, one thing I definitely do have in abundance is ample and diverse selections of social experiences, because objectively and by anybody's standards, I've just known a fucking hell of a lot of people in my 35 years on this planet. So one thing I can tell you for absolute certain about the current year is that if there has ever been a time in which giving minority groups the benefit of the doubt and having good faith in their arguments and claims of distress, if there's ever been a time where it was overwhelmingly useful just to trust them when they say something bad happened to them based on being a minority, if there was ever a good time for that, which is certainly debatable to begin with, now certainly isn't that time. Yes, I am saying I am completely skeptical of every story of a supposed racist slur yelled out of the window of a pickup truck. I am completely skeptical of every gay or lesbian that claims to have gotten a note on their door about being in Trump's America now, you fucking degenerates. And I am completely skeptical when a white woman claims that basically anything legitimately offended her. No, Harriet, I don't believe that this person's words rocked you to your core and made you feel physically or even figuratively unsafe. I think that you're expecting to raise your hand, tell the teacher, and get the class clown in trouble yet again. And really, the only legitimate emotional distress that might come in this process happens once dear Harriet becomes frustrated when she realizes that she isn't going to get her way this time. The political right might have a bunch of stupid assholes in their ranks, as is plainly evident to anybody who questions the science behind race realism, and they certainly might end up pulling a bunch of crap like, "I'm not homophobic, I just don't like it when gay guys do this, and that, and that, and that, and, well, everything, really, stay away from me, faggots." I won't be surprised if I see more of that type of thing from the right myself, but as it stands now, I abso-fucking-lutely refuse to take members of the left at their word when they complain about such supposed acts of bigotry, which is something that the left has collectively earned. You've gone a bit far beyond crying wolf. You've cried lion, tiger, Tyrannosaurus Rex, and watch the fuck out! They've unleashed the goddamn Kraken! You've completely bought out the Southern Poverty Law Center several years ago, and that pisses me off because my mother still gives them money. You've had the Anti-Defamation League declare a cartoon internet meme frog a hate symbol, and the ACLU has defended the most hateful public figure of the current year, Linda Sarsour. I definitely have my moments where I ask my friends to trust me in regards to things that would take a long time to explain if they are uninitiated, like the fact that the Russia conspiracy really is almost entirely fake news. But at the same time, I can and will always explain to people and link them to proper information if necessary. However, the problem with the left is not simply that they repeatedly ask that you give them good faith gestures in regards to taking them at their word, most commonly on the internet without even knowing them, but more so, they demand that you listen and believe, and they'll call you names if you ask for solid evidence. So no, I can't do it anymore. And that really sucks. It's gonna be a while before I can trust anybody who is like that again, and I hate that feeling because I have always considered myself somebody who is committed to sticking up for the little guy and what is just. But more than that, I refuse to put my eggs in a basket next to lies. That's all I have to say for this video. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to PayPal donate. You can always do that. Or you can be like these people so I can buy a new computer, and stay tuned.